Actually, I would like to thank the team who developed this wonderful and legendary event. And I would like to thank all the speakers who started today. Actually, the amount of inspiration that we received is tremendous. And before we start, I would like just to say something very quick. At the peak of Corona pandemic, ICESCO collaborated with FIFA team to develop a motivational video. All FIFA team, the players, they clapped to support the medical team who showed great dedication throughout the pandemic. And today, actually, after all this inspiration, I would like to roll this out and to thank all the female medical team and all the sciences that supported us not only through the pandemic, but since they started, since all the great names till this moment. So I would like to invite you, the attendees here at the headquarters, the speakers, even the people who are watching us, to clap, to put our hands together for all the scientists, the female scientists who made it. And we are here today to remember their achievement and their contribution. So equality in science can't happen unless we make it happen. And we recognize that this mission of empowering women requires more than being not racist. Actually, we must be actively not racist and work very hard towards a more just and equitable world. It is necessary for people in positions of power to take actions and to speak up for those who are not heard. And in this roundtable, we will be honored to have various female leaders from various countries with various backgrounds. We will learn from our speakers about their very unique experiences. And actually, we are looking forward to have a tip from each one of them to young ladies who are embarking on their scientific career. And from what we are noticing on all our social media, a lot of them are following us now. So we will start with Mrs. Kimberly Geyer. She is the founder of Global Women Leader Scientific Philanthropy, chair of the Center of Global Equality at Cambridge. She's with us? Okay, great. So from your background, how do you think philanthropy organization can make a breakthrough shift to support in fulfilling the gender gap in general and specifically in science?
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, esteemed panelists. I really would like to start, I think, with the obvious, where we are now, particularly in the middle of this pandemic, noting that this has exacerbated many of the problems that women and girls faced before this health crisis. Before COVID-19, 129 million girls were out of school around the world, and the Malala Fund estimates that 20 million more girls may never return to the classroom after the pandemic. The gender norms in many communities limit girls' ambitions, and they're often told they don't need an education because their value lies in domestic labor or motherhood. So first and foremost, the barrier that we all need to focus on from a philanthropy viewpoint, from policymakers, from leadership positions, is tackling the crisis. When we move girls into women and girls into science roles, if we are still failing them at the fundamental level of basic and secondary and higher education. So that's my first point. I think secondly, we need actually more women in decision-making roles on education policies and budgets to make sure this is prioritized. And as a philanthropic community, I'm actively volunteering my time as a philanthropist. I'm a banker by profession. I'm a science lover and a science major through my studies to make sure this is on the agenda, to come up with new pooled mechanisms to prioritize funding for women and girls education. And I sit on the high-level steering group for the Education Outcome Fund, which is hosted by UNICEF, which is trying to rapidly scale up and prioritize, in particular, education for girls. For this reset, we need leaders to mobilize a substantial financial stimulus for education, and we need to get creative about doing that. You know, beyond philanthropy, there is debt cancellation, aid budgets, tax reform in low-income countries that can be tapped to really get this on the agenda. And we need advocates to push for policy change at the local, national, and international levels. And the group that I convene, Global Women Leaders Strategic Philanthropy, we use our voices as a collective of women around the world, whether it be philanthropists, women in government, women on the ground, working in education and science, technology. It will take a collective voice. And I note Professor Foch's comments earlier on the power of community to move and shift the conversation and the funding that follows for women and girls. Finally, I'd like to also focus on investing in female science entrepreneurs, women science entrepreneurs. The Center for Global Equality at Cambridge is an accelerator of women and men scientists, PhD students who are using inclusive innovation to come up with solutions for developing countries in conjunction, in concert, together with them. And I think it's a great platform, a great model of providing a space of resources, of information, of toolkits, of finance, to make sure that women entrepreneurs that are going through that program are supported. You know, often we don't invest in what I call the pipeline builders, you know, taking a good idea from a university student, a PhD student, and getting it to actually take root in whether it be water technology, engineering, whatever it may be, takes time. And we need support systems to allow women in particular, through childcare, through scholarships, through other investment, to actually women working on solutions that are challenges for women and girls in many countries around the world. You are not bringing the women's lens to the development of those solutions. And it does bring a different perspective. We need inclusive innovation. And I think women are well placed to do that. Finally, I'd like to close with an anecdote on some of the challenges or barriers that I've seen that keep women and girls from pursuing a career in science. And it came from a woman who actually sits on my board. She is a lawyer. She's a global chair of a global law firm, and her first love was science, actually. And she started out in a computer science classroom full of mostly men. And on the first day, the professor handed out a problem for coding and said, if you can't do this in 30 minutes or less, this course is not for you and you should drop it. And she and her friend couldn't do it. And so they walked out, they changed their majors, and they never went back. You know, how many of the men in that class do you think also maybe couldn't do that problem but didn't drop out and stuck with it? You know, how much further ahead could we be in science and gender balance with tech in particular if professors like that gave a moment's thought to using that sort of aggressive directive as to sort of portray the problem as opposed to maybe a different approach? We need support systems, we need to support each other, and we need to work together to keep women and girls in science and help others around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kimberly. Actually, partnership is one of the main pillars that ICESCO would like to extend throughout the Year of Women to ensure, as you mentioned, that we have inclusive innovation and we work towards a support system that work really on finding effective solution for the real challenges. Thank you for highlighting this. And thanks for all the efforts that you are doing in your organization to promote it further. And from Mr. Kimberly, we will move now to Prof. Carmen Clever. She is a professor in inorganic chemistry in Rovira University in Spain. She was a research leader with continued involvement in competitive projects and in the industrial contracts. She had supervised 30 PhDs She was the Vice Director of Research at the Technological Center of Chemistry of Catalonia. She also has been honored and recognized as distinguished researcher by the Catalan government for her contribution. Hello, Doctor. So,
thank you. Sorry.
So from your experience, what are the lessons learned that you would like to share today with future researchers?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. First, I want to thank ICESCO for this event organization and Dr. Muhammad Sharif for the invitation. I really also want to thank all the previous speakers for so inspiring conference and talks. This is really a very important event. It's a privilege for me to participate. I am chemistry professor at the University Rovira i Virgili in Tarragona, which is a small but dynamic city on the Mediterranean coast, 100 kilometers south of Barcelona in Spain. Through my life and my professional career, I have known that learning to understand things allow us to develop personally and to be happy and improve the standard living of the society. As I have been said here, education is the base. Education, culture, science, and continuous learning is the base for an integral progress. As a chemist, I have known that the curiosity to understand, the curiosity to learn the reason of the thing is the great personal help for ourselves and the community. It is well known, has been also this morning said here, that science in all the disciplines and in the broadest aspect plays a basic role in the humanity quality of life. And even more now, when threats loom over our future and our planet, we need an integral development for a sustainable world. Women, as part of the society, cannot be outside of this challenge. That is why the incorporation of women in science and education without any kind of restriction is so important. Women should be more and more sensible to the need of training and scientific development, because it's only the integral and sustainable progress as an objective, as a global objective, which implies the commitment of all sectors of the society. In Spain, I can say that in our classroom, in chemical science, more than 70% are women. More than 70% of the students are women. However, when we look at position of responsibility in the large companies and in the important institutions, women are still a minority, although increasing today. And this is the point where is required the woman empowerment, reinforcing personal capacities which allow actively participate in the decisions about their own life first, and in the community, economic, political, and social terms. To achieve a graduation in science, to look for a grant for a PhD, chasing the dreams must be a possibility for all young women who decide to have a scientific career. Not be afraid. Women in Science Unity in Spain, in the Ministry of Science and Innovation, addresses the challenges of gender equality in science, trying to adopt policies that can solve the problems of the women. In this context, Women, Society and Innovation Observatory organized today an event that will be inaugurated this afternoon for the first Vice President and Minister of Presidency, in which the results of the first report about young research in Spain will be presented. In our university here in Tarragona, the university has implemented the Observatory for Equality, and a specific equality plan presented February 2020, last year, to create a culture, gender, and feminist equality, and to stimulate the growing presence of women in research and innovation projects. This equality plan from our university joins some of the Sustainable Development Goals in the 2030 Agenda. The 4, quality education. The 5th, gender equality. The 10, reduce inequalities. The 16, peace, justice, and strong institution. And 17, partnership for the goals. The equality plan of our university aims to guarantee that direct or indirect gender discrimination doesn't occur in the process of access and promotion of the professional career. This is a particularly important point. No discrimination in the process of access and promotion. This plan promotes the incorporation of the gender perspective in research and stimulates the growing presence of women in research and innovation projects, facilitating, favoring their role as IP. The plan includes a program of help to doctoral thesis and a program of reincorporation for women who have abandoned research due to maternity or due to family care. Chemistry is a field where women have demonstrated great efficacy. In our department, more than 50%, in the staff, more 50% of the professors, we are women. And I can say that young colleague researchers, women, in our university and in our institutes, in our campus, are leading important European projects where the objectives fit with the Sustainable Development Goals. These projects aim, for instance, to develop processes without secondary products, saving energy, converting any waste in material resources, which is called circular economy, always looking for new and sustainable processes, always learning new techniques and new techniques for a requisite as a better world. Just to finish, I would like to say that in our Faculty of Chemistry, from the 90s, we have doctoral students from Morocco, and in general, were always men. Now, in the group, we have a girl, Nasima, doing the doctoral thesis. We are very happy. And we hope this is a possibility for other girls students. In this way, the University Rovira y Virgili in Tarragona is willing to establish collaboration with the ICESCO network universities. Today, the science is connecting the world, has been said here. To be a science is to be part of a world community that speaks same language, the language of science, and that allows personal and social development. I invite to all motivated young women to join the scientific career. Probably it's not easy, but the effort is largely compensated. Thank you very much.
Prof, I was delighted of listening what you have mentioned, and it is a great honor for me to comment on your talk and to summarize this wonderful experience. But if I will summarize it, I summarize it in 4 points. I never saw a female professor in my life, and thank you on a personal level and for all the ladies who inspired us and created the example. I pursued what I love and never give up. These are 2 words that we were very inspired by. We heard it a lot today, and I'm very sure that a lot of the people and the ladies who are following us today will take it further, and they will. It will be their source of inspiration. Only action can make that change, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the DJ of our organization, ICESCO, for making the decision of having 2021 Year of Women, and also His Majesty Mohammed al-Sadis for giving us this honorable patronage. And of course, to thank the team who worked on making this happen and creating this wonderful journey. Actually, today from Azerbaijan to Jordan to Mauritius to Greece to Romania to Spain, and now actually to another inspiring story to NASA. Dr. Catherine with us. She is an assistant research professor at the University of Maryland. She's also the NASA Harvest Africa Program Director. She has broad research interests, including application of satellite remote sensing and machine learning to agriculture and food security. Dr. Catherine, big data, future emerging technology, how this will give a wider scope of opportunities for women, and is it going to maybe create the breakthrough and helping us bridging the gap of gender?
Thank you so much. This is such a wonderful and amazing opportunity to be a part of this conference and to speak and be a part of these amazing women who have inspired, and it's quite a wonderful honor. So I'm really delighted to be here. Having started my research career in Uganda, doing my undergrad, and then moving to the US to do my master's and my PhD, created a stark difference between there's basically two completely different research realms where the things that I had access to in the United States are things that to this day researchers in Sub-Saharan Africa dream of. Everything from lab equipment, having computer with internet. And these things are quite required for having a more inclusive, if you want to think about it as a field, in terms of data science, where we are in terms of computing and information technology and the use of remote sensing and satellite imagery for understanding how our Earth functions. If this field is to be inclusive in the use of data to come up with solutions, for example, one that's really close to my heart and that I've been pursuing pretty much since the start of my PhD, looking at how to use satellite data to inform food security decisions, is this needs to be addressed, where if you want to have real fundamental solutions that can actually lift millions out of poverty, at the same time ensuring that we're protecting our environment and protecting the future of this earth, we need to have everybody at the research table. We need to have other opinions. We need to have other views in order to come up with those really unique solutions. And in my current position as the NASA Harvest Program Director for Africa, it just came up just purely because I persisted and I tried to understand. I mean, I was bombarded with a lot of information in my journey, and this did not deter me. It just made me realize that I need to do more reading. I need to understand how the world functions. I need to know how research works. And so I've been very fortunate to be in a group where I've been supported to pursue and try to do things that I think are interesting. Researching and being able to work back in Africa, working in multiple countries with different organizations have given me this perspective that makes my voice worth listening to. If we're going to come up with these solutions, it's the same when it comes to STEM and having a more inclusive STEM field. So having researchers from developing countries who are developing amazing, unique ways to understand and how to improve the society is important. And this, one way to do this is through using data, and using data like satellite data, using cloud computing and machine learning requires access to infrastructure. These things have to be addressed in order to leave, if we're not going to leave anybody behind in terms of research in this field. The other thing that I can think of is promoting and uplifting and showcasing minorities and bringing a more diverse face to science, which basically opens up the idea that, oh, I can also do machine learning, or I can also be an astronaut, or I can also be a chemist, I can also run a lab, I can be a professor, I can get a bachelor's degree, I get a master's degree. This needs to be showcased. We need to see more women scientists, people of diverse backgrounds on the cover of popular magazines to represent, to bring that representation. I think one of the themes from last year has been that representation matters. If you see yourself in someone, somewhere where you think you might want to go, you might actually pursue going in that direction. And so that is basically my overall remark for today, but I'm really grateful for having this opportunity to listen and learn from these amazing, wonderful women who have really blazed the trail for those of us who never dreamed that we would be here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. As you mentioned, the future of this earth require inclusive innovation and inclusive collaboration. And if we will continue doing the same thing that you used to do, we will have the same results. So I believe today we had huge amount of inspiration, inspiration enough to inspire us to think differently. Actually, now I will leave the floor to my colleague Ramata, who is heading the Division of Human Science, who will continue with our distinguished speakers.
Merci Saleh. I will express myself in French, as in ICESCO we have three languages, Arabic, English and French. C'est tout un honneur de plus de célébrer cette année de la femme, qui montre qu'on aura 365 jours et 8760 heures pour célébrer la femme, espérant que ce sera aussi toute l'humanité pour célébrer la femme. Dans ce parterre, ce riche parterre de femmes, nous avons l'honneur de recevoir professeur Bouchra. Professeur Bouchra est, comment la présenter, tellement son parcours est riche et très inspirant. Professeur Bouchra est spécialiste de génétique moléculaire sur les plantes médicinales, ce qui est un aspect très important. On parle de médecine, la médecine moderne, mais également le savoir endogène à travers les plantes médicinales. Professeur Bouchra, de Istanbul à Cambridge, professeur a reçu énormément de prix et d'honneurs pour magnifier le travail qu'elle est en train de faire sur les questions de médecine, mais appliquées aux plantes médicinales. Elle est également l'actuelle présidente de la chaire ICESCO sur les sciences, ce qui est extrêmement important, donc un modèle pour les femmes. Professeur, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very kind introduction. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. Honestly, it's a matter of great pleasure for me to be part of this August forum and to celebrate International Day for Women and Girls in Science. First of all, I congratulate ICESCO for organizing this event and for gathering such prestigious personalities for the purpose. Being a biologist, I have always been inspired by Barbara McClintock and Rosalind Franklin, and more recently, obviously, the recipients of Nobel Prize for their work in genome editing. I feel that there is no doubt that science and technology is important, and without that, no nation can progress. And obviously, women make more than half of the population, and without their participation, progress is impossible. And yet we see, it's ironic to see gender gap in almost every field, in some areas maybe less than the others. For example, in my country, like in most of the countries, we see that there are a lot of women in biology or medicine, but very few in engineering or like geography. But also we see that, when I grew up and was studying in my university, I always noticed that you see more women in almost every field at lower level, but as you move forward to higher level, there are very few. And I think that is something we notice everywhere. As ICESCO Women's Science Chair, I have been holding this honorary position for the last few years. I got the opportunity to study the reasons behind it. And what we have observed always is that, first of all, the most important component is the attitude of the society. And by the attitude of the society, I mean that attitude in the family, that whether they feel that their daughters should study science or not, the attitude at the institutions, whether they have that environment which can help girls to study science or not, as well as attitude of society as whole, that whether it's comfortable for them to move around and work in the labs in late hours or not, whether they feel the biasness or not. The second important factor which we noticed was that it's the science and technology is a very competitive field. And I'm not saying that women cannot compete, but the one aspect which we feel that the reason women can't reach to the higher level and they are left behind is because in the late 20s or early 30s is the time when they start their families. And so that takes a lot of time and energy. And this is exactly the same time when they have to write grants, they have to publish and establish their labs also. So that makes things difficult for them. Similarly, the other factor which we noticed was lack of collaborations, because usually women are shy, and also because they are involved with their families, and most of the time their families do not allow them to participate in conferences or workshops or meet people they need to meet. And we all know that collaborations are so important to produce good science. The other factor which we observed was that the representation of women at highest level is very little. And obviously they have to be at decision-making position, as some of my colleagues have already mentioned, that you will not be able to get policies which are compatible with encouraging women to higher level unless you have women at policy-making positions, unless you have their representation and their involvement in decision-taking. So I personally feel that individual efforts at every level is required, whether it is at individual level, institutional level, community level, national level, or international level. For example, in individual level, obviously, whether you are a parent or a mentor or policymaker, you have to make an effort to encourage women. At institutional level, obviously, you need to develop the environment to encourage women, to facilitate them. At community level, obviously, we have to see the factors which hinder their participation, and of course, the national and international level. But to be honest, I'm an optimist, and I see that probably the current era is the best era for women to flourish. The reason is because I see that, for example, I just mentioned the lack of collaboration. In the last more than 1 year, due to COVID-19, even though there is a lot of damage has occurred, but at the same time, this concept of webinar and e-learning has really become a norm. And that has really helped in our institution. Obviously, I'm heading Women University, which is the largest women university in Pakistan for women. And I see that all those researchers which were not able to be in touch with people working in other countries and experts of their field, now they got the opportunity through webinars, through e-conferences to collaborate with them. Otherwise, it was not possible for them to travel, because that requires a lot of money as well as time. And also they have to leave their families to go abroad, which is sometimes not possible. So I see that this culture has really helped women to be able to improve in their capacity to develop collaborations and perform good research. Similarly, in Pakistan, we have been having a lot of discussions sometimes that, for example, a lot of women go to medical science and become doctors, but later on they are not able to continue their career because of their family responsibilities. But, so we have been having a lot of debates at some stage that should we limit the seats for girls so that it's a waste of money that they become doctors and then they cannot continue their careers. But in this pandemic, we saw that culture of telemedicine, and a lot of women who were not actually being able to practice medicine by going to clinics or hospitals, they were able to work at home and contribute online, telemedicine forum to make themselves useful and contribute. So similarly, I feel that the idea of using technology to become entrepreneurs and to become freelancers and other professions in which provide women flexible working environment and working from home has really helped women to perform much better. And so I see that especially in the last 1 or 2 years, there are lots of women who are doing much better, and there are lots of more prospect for them in these current situations. So I'm very optimistic, and I'm very glad that things are moving in the right direction. But that does not mean that it's enough. We need to do a lot, and I'm sure organizations and countries are realizing that need, and they are trying to create the environment for that. But probably we need to make it more focused and maybe link certain things with that, as some of my colleagues have already mentioned, that we have to set targets to achieve them, and it can be certainly achieved. But as I said, I'm an optimist, and I feel that in spite of hurdles previously, we have been having people who got Nobel Prize. And in Pakistan also, I see that women reaching to certain levels, certain top positions even, in spite of all those difficulties. But gradually these difficulties are decreasing, and hopefully things will become much better. So I feel this day as an opportunity to not only acknowledge and appreciate the contribution of women, but also celebrate the contribution which has been made by the women, and also admire and appreciate the men who have played a very important role as fathers, as mentors, as institutional heads, as policymakers, to help women to achieve those goals. Because in my society, sometimes there is a perception that if a woman is performing better, maybe they will get the job, and that will affect that would not be a good news for men, because it will take jobs from them. But in fact, in society like ours also, men are realizing at some very important position that it's not a bad news that if women perform better. It's a good news, because our society cannot progress without that. And having a successful, strong women helps the family, it helps the society, it helps humanity in general. So I think we need to not just appreciate the women who have made contribution, but also appreciate all those men who have been supporting in changing this mindset. And I'm very optimistic that is going to help us in the very long run to achieve the target which we need to achieve to end this gender gap. And one day it would end, definitely, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Merci, professeur, pour ce plaidoyer vibrant et merci surtout d'avoir abordé la question du social. Tout se joue au niveau du social qui détermine notre trajectoire. Combien il est important de tenir compte des normes et des stéréotypes qui entravent très souvent juste l'accès des filles et des femmes aux disciplines scientifiques. C'est un volet très important, et merci aussi d'avoir abordé l'aspect politique qui est extrêmement important. C'est-à-dire qu'au-delà des normes sociales, ce sont les politiques aussi qui nous aident à déterminer des cadres qui facilitent une meilleure intégration des filles et des femmes dans les disciplines scientifiques. Thank you again.